My name is Jerry Gill. Today is March 18th, 2010. I'm visiting with J. Barry Harrison at his home in Fairfax, Oklahoma. This interview is for the Old State Storage Project of the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. And Barry, I appreciate you taking time to visit with me today.
Jerry, I'm glad you're here in the house today.
Okay. You know, kind of background, I know that your life has been steeped in Oklahoma State University history. You got a strong, kind of historical background, both sides of the family, and your family's been prominent in history and heritage of Stillwater and the state of Oklahoma. Gosh, I think back, William Edward Barry, your great-grandfather, settled in the Indian Territory in 1878. He was a successful cattleman, Indian trader, businessman, and co-founder of Stillwater National Bank. Your grandfather, James E. Barry, was president of Stillwater National Bank and a 5-term lieutenant governor of the state of Oklahoma.
Yes.
And I think an uncle of yours, William Ayler Barry, was Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the state of Oklahoma. So you've got some good roots here in Oklahoma.
I sure do.
Is this family legacy, is that a source of pride to you?
Oh, yes. Our family has been real close, and I think our immediate family's close, but also cousins and aunts, uncles. We're a close family, and I think that the family legacy goes way back, and we are a close family. We had a big family reunion. I was trying to think of the year it was, but we had it in Stillwater at a park, and we had. You went with the group, your immediate family group, and that was the four. Actually, it was the William Barry's 12 kids all had a group there. And then we all got together and took one big picture, and I think there were something like 2,500 people at that.
How many?
2,500 at that family reunion.
Wow, mercy.
So it was quite a group, and everybody got along real well and enjoyed the day.
That's great. That's super. Well, your mother, Virginia, was the second, I think, of 7 children to James E. and Edwina Morrison Barry.
Yes.
She grew up in Stillwater in her home there on Duck Street.
Yeah, 502 Duck.
Your grandparents were very special people. I know I've visited with some folks that think very highly of them. And did you get a chance to spend time with them growing up? Did you know them well?
Yes, I did. I used to spend any vacation that I could. I would spend there at the Barry house, and my grandmother, particularly in the evening in the summer when I was there, we'd get in her car and we would go to a watermelon stand. She loved watermelon. And it was like a firecracker stand, but they'd have a horse trough in the middle of a square with a cover over the top of the whole thing with seats around it. And you could sit there and they'd cut a slice of watermelon and put it right in the little counter and had a bench seat around it. And you could sit there and eat watermelon and visit, and that was one of our special things to do. And my grandfather would join us when he was home and could.
Well, what kind of asked you mentioned your grandfather, 5-term lieutenant governor we mentioned earlier, and president of Stillwater National Bank for years, very influential individual. But what do you remember about him as a grandfather?
Anytime you'd see him, when I was in college, I'd go in the bank, cash a check or something, and he'd be sitting in the office. It was down on South Main then, and his office was right just inside the door there on the right when you came in, and he'd always see you and hollering. He had trouble keeping all the grandkids' names straight. Half the time he might call me by another one, but then he would always think of which one I was, and then he would correct himself. But he always had a big smile, and he was always real friendly, and and motion for you to come in and talk a while. Always glad to see you.
I always heard he was kind of the PR guy. In addition to being president, he was sort of the PR guy for the bank. He loved to, like I said, his desk was close to the front. He always wanted to greet people.
Yes, he did.
And meet them.
He was like that, and when we would have our family get-togethers on holidays at his house, he always sat at the head of the table and just visited, and had quite a personality. I guess that's why he was such a good politician.
Did he have a good sense of humor?
Had a good sense of humor. He was pretty stern at times, but if you kind of got out of line with some of the little ones, he could speak gruffly to them, but then he'd always, had a good personality. And
you remember some personality traits that he had, some habits, some things that you remember about him?
He was an avid reader, and he and my grandmother loved to play gin rummy. They had in their dining room, they had a bay window and a card table right in front of that window. And in the middle of the afternoon, if he came home for a little while from the bank, they might start up a quick little gin rummy game, or in the evening after dinner, they might play gin rummy. And you didn't want to interrupt that if you were visiting. But then he would go into his den and read after that, and then go to bed. He liked to get up early. And he had honeybees. Loved honeybees, and he took care of them, and he'd bring in honeycombs. And of course, they always had honey around, and in the morning for breakfast he'd have toast and honey.
Was that a family tradition? Did his father?
I don't know how that got started. But I remember going into the kitchen, and he'd be sitting there at the kitchen table, and he'd have toast, and it was usually raisin toast. My mother loved to make raisin bread, and he'd have raisin toast with honey on it.
But I want to come back to your grandfather in a minute.
Okay.
James, I'm talking about his political career, but you mentioned your grandmother, Edwina Morrison, Berry. Now, I heard she was a pretty sharp lady. What do you remember about her?
She was a very sharp lady. Just classy, well-mannered, and she liked for you to have good manners and good English. She would correct you if you didn't use correct English. I remember going one year, I had lace shoes on, and I couldn't keep them when I was visiting in the summer, my regular visit. I couldn't keep my shoes laces tied. So she took me to town and bought me a pair of loafers. Said, now you wear those and you don't have to worry about tying those shoelaces. But she had just a really outgoing personality, and just a friendly, warm smile, and she was your typical grandmother. All the grandkids just loved her, and I think she loved them all. Never forgot a birthday of any of them, and she always knew all the grandkids' names. If 20 grandkids were there, she knew them all and their birthdays, and never failed to send a card or a present on a birthday.
She was a pretty well-educated lady too, wasn't she?
Well-educated.
She graduated from Oklahoma with the A&M then at Oklahoma State University in 1908, I believe.
I think that's right. Now, I'm not sure about that date, but
her family was a pretty influential family. The Morrisons, were they in the area?
Yes. Now, she had a sister, Virginia Morris Welch. Murphy, excuse me, Virginia Murphy. And She was a well-educated, classy lady.
Were they related to the Murphys?
White's Murphy was her husband's name, and I'm not sure what kind of business he was in.
The mercantile business there in Stillwater, they had the Murphy store. Was that theirs?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Well, back to your grandmother again. I understand someone had indicated and heard that she was almost a perfect politician's wife. That she a lot of teas and entertained a lot of people. Is that right?
She could entertain. She had a nice house to entertain in, and enjoyed entertaining. Had enough help that she could entertain and be cordial to all the people, and still have everything that everyone needed, and even at the family dinners that we would have, that they were always fun for not only the grown-ups but the kids also.
He's playing some activities for the kids.
Oh yes, yes.
Now we were talking earlier before we started interviewing you. You said you spent a lot of times in the summers, especially there. Can you tell me
Summers,
again,
Christmas, holidays. Yes, I would. My parents would put me on our local. We call it the Doodlebug. It was
here
just
in Fairfax,
3-passenger passenger train that ran from, I think, Kansas somewhere in southern Oklahoma, but it went through Fairfax, Pawnee, and then into Stillwater. The train went right by Yost Lake and then into the Stillwater Depot. And I would ride that. My parents would put me on it here in Fairfax, and my grandmother would meet me at the depot, take me off of it, and when I got there, I started at a pretty young age going back and forth.
how old were you when you first made the trip?
You know, I want to say I was probably 6 or 7.
Didn't have any concern about you being on the train by yourself?
No, nobody was concerned about it. I might have been. That's probably about the age I was. But I did that quite a little bit.
How long did it take you to get there?
Oh, it wasn't. Probably about 2 hours.
Is that pretty exciting for you?
Oh yes, I enjoyed it. I got to see a lot of country.
Get to know the conductor.
You were always anxious to get there. After a little while of riding on the train, then you started.
Did you have any brothers and sisters who went with you?
No, I remember going by myself a lot, but I did have 2 sisters about my age, and we would usually go by ourselves and stay. I don't ever remember going and staying with. I think my grandmother might have had some rule that she didn't want more than 1 or 2 kids at her house at the same time to take care of.
Back to your granddad again, Jamesbury. Did you ever help in any of these campaigns?
Yes, I just kind of grew up with campaigning with my parents. Our duty was to keep signs out in this area, as far north as Kansas, and of course all across the north part of Oklahoma. So I was aware of campaigning and at a pretty young age, and kind of continued so clear up until I was almost probably in high school.
So your job was primarily putting up signs and maintaining signs?
Putting up signs and maintain that, and then we would have folders or little cards to hand out, and we'd do that on Main Street or different towns around.
How far did you go from Fairfax?
Well, we would go all over Osage County and probably up into Tulsa County, to Washington County, and then we'd go west quite a ways.
In Pawnee County.
And then go into Pawnee County.
Wow, so you covered quite a territory.
Yes.
You just load those signs up in the truck and
put
them up
in a car or truck, and then we would always take some of the handouts, and when we'd go through the city, we would hand those out on Main Street, and then put the signs up where they let us.
What was one of the slogans you were telling me?
Always on the handouts it would say, it'd have a picture of my granddad, and then it'd say, "It's berry picking time," right underneath the sign.
Great. Did you ever observe any of his campaign appearances or speeches?
I did once, but I was, I was so young, and there were so many people around that I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to that. I got more interested in that the older I got, and after I was grown and could think back at some of the things that I remember.
See, I'm trying to you overlapped. See, you were born in 39.
Yes.
And then your grandfather, his last year in office was early 50s, 52
yes.
or something
yes.
like that.
Uh-huh.
So you would have been almost saying high school age. Would you have been junior high school age when he was governor?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think he went out of office in 55, wasn't it?
Something like that. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And
so you were almost in what? So you started college in
57.
57. So just right before you went to college. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you verify a story for us? I was talking to Sarah Jane Rogers, his daughter, and she said that was it Cowboy Pink Williams that beat him that last election, and said that Edwina said she wouldn't wear pink she took everything in the wardrobe had pink in it and threw it away. Does that sound like Edwina?
Yes, that was it exactly. Now then, I was in Boy State. And our speaker was the newly elected. That was in '56. The newly elected governor, Cowboy Pink Williams. So he spoke to our Boy State, and I went up after and told him that I was James E. Berry's grandson. I shook hands with him and I congratulated him on the victory.
Mm-hmm.
But so that pretty well confirms when that was.
Well, I don't think Edwina was that gracious.
No, she wasn't. She wasn't.
Well, do you remember what kind of campaigner your grandfather was?
Oh, he was a pretty strong campaigner.
Mm-hmm.
His idea was to shake hands with as many people as he could and ask for their vote. He said the more people you shake hands with, the better results you're going to have in an election.
So he repressed the flesh and got out with the people.
Yes, so he liked to do that.
You have a campaign caravan where we went around the state. And
yes, he'd do that, and then, of course, they had a lot of, and they had no television then, and I don't ever remember him doing many ads on television, and a lot of paper ads, and a lot of signs, and a lot of handshaking.
Did you ever go to his office in Oklahoma City at the Capitol?
No, I never did. I never did go to his office, but after I got there, I saw lots of the pictures he was in.
Mm-hmm.
He covered one hall where my office was, all up and down. And I think I had a little resemblance to his picture and mine.
Oh gosh. Well, you talked about earlier that you made a lot of family reunions, especially events, Thanksgiving, Christmas, etc. There's some of the other family members that that stick out in your mind that you remember. Aunts, uncles, personalities that you remember.
Yes, my Uncle Frank had a wonderful personality. And after my grandfather passed away, Uncle Frank took over the bank as president. And he also helped organize the activity at the country club, the new one out west of town. And then my Uncle George had a wonderful personality. I liked, I enjoyed being around both of them all the time. Also, my Aunt Sarah Jane. You know how you had the opportunity to visit with her, and she's just as warm and friendly, and And Sarah Jane's the kind that keeps up with your activity. She always kept it running. I guess a summation of my activity through high school, college, and politics. She was always real interested in politics and could tell you everything about every election. And
she was,
the whole family had a wonderful personality and loved one another and loved to have you around them. But I think that was the most outstanding thing about the Berry family, their warmness and their personalities.
Well, Barry, what about your immediate family? Can we talk a little bit about you and your parents and your sisters? Can you tell me about your early life, where you grew up and some of your activities?
I was born half a block away from right here in an old makeshift hospital they call Hamill Hospital, just a block east of here. And we lived in the country, east of town, 3 or 4 miles. And I had 2 sisters, and I grew up in the house out east of town with. We had a great time, mainly riding horses all around the country out there, and they were both older than I was, so they'd bring some of their friends out occasionally. And
you were on the farm?
We had a big ranch out east of town.
How large was your ranch? You remember?
Well,
at that time,
my father was in partners early on with Gene Mullendore. That's how my dad moved to this country. Gene Mullendore had the ranch over at Pawhuska, and then he had they call it the Little Chief Ranch out here close to Fairfax. And he needed some cows for that ranch, and he called my father out in the Guyman Panhandle area, where my father lived at that time, mother and dad, and said, I want you to buy me some cows and send them here. Told him what kind he wanted and how many. And then he called back in a day or 2 and said, just come with them. I want you to partner with me on them. So then my dad came with the cows, and they put them on the ranch out east of town. And he leased a place to live from Lashley, an Indian that had some land and a house out by the country club. And we lived out there. And he ran the cows with Gene for several years, and then started leasing up land around himself, and running cattle. And then he started buying cattle and sending them north to the feedlots. And then we moved in here in 1944. And bought this house, moved in town, and then leased a place out north of town and ran cattle there. And he had a man that worked for him. I think he went to work for my dad when I was born, and worked for him until I was a senior in high school. He retired. But I spent a lot of time working cattle with him, and doctoring cattle and building fence and doing all that the whole time.
You get a lot of ranching and roping and riding in your background.
I grew up, working cattle all the time.
So it's interesting. Your father, if I understood right, he actually was in the Panhandle at that time.
He lived at Guyman.
And he was in ranching and buying cattle, brokering and kind of business.
Yes. And he worked for the government. That was during the Depression. And he had to buy cattle for the government. That they had a program going trying to shore up the economics of the cattle business. And, so he did that, and then that's when the Mullendorf, Gene Mullendorf called and said, "Sure like for you to come here and partner with me on these cattle."
Interesting. So you grew up in that environment, spent a lot of time on the ranch, and you said men and fence.
Yes.
All the things that go along with ranching. It's not as glamorous as it seems, is it?
Yeah. But it was a good life.
Well, can you tell a little bit about your high school and community activities?
Okay, and I went to high school here in Fairfax, played sports, pretty good in football, and I graduated and had the opportunity to get recruited by some schools around OSU, OU, several other major colleges, and chose to go to OSU.
Is that kind of because you're influenced by your family on each side and all the OSU?
My father sat here when the coaches would come in from different colleges and talk to me. And one time when Eddie Crowder was here, my father thought I was getting a little bit too interested in one of our local colleges, OU, and after Eddie Crowder left, he said, "Now, son, you can go anywhere you want to go to school, but I don't want you to go to OU."
So you go anywhere else you want to go, you can go.
Anywhere else you want to go would be fine with me.
In your position, were you a lineman, or?
I was a lineman. I played a line in high school, and a little bit of they had me out on the end for a while. And then when I got to OSU, I was guard and tackle. Had the opportunity to make an All-State. Played in the first All-State game at Tulsa.
Oh, and that was in 57.
7. Yes. And I met a guy named Pat Hutchins, and he was going to OSU, so we lived together in Tulsa at the All-State game, and then lived together at OSU. And then he lost a brother and dropped out of school, and I moved in with a guy named Blanchard Reel.
Blanchard Reel.
That had an insurance company after he graduated. We lived together for several years at OSU.
That's right. Just before we get back, I want to kind of pick up on your OSU, but again, I wanted to ask about your mom and dad. What do you remember about your father's personality? What was
my mom and dad had the best personality. They were fun people to be around. I think about them every day now and how much fun they were and how warm that personality they had. They got along well with everyone. They and always had lots of people around. They socialized real well, and they were good parents. They encouraged us to associate with kids our own age, and my dad was a basketball player at OSU, or A&M College then, back in the early 30s, late 20s, and he liked sports. Really enjoyed football, so they would go to most of the football games, and I can remember as a pretty young child going to football games with my dad just to watch. But they always had loved to have their children in the house, especially for holidays. Right here in this room is where we always had all our holiday meals, and we always had meals at dinner together. and talk over the activities of the day growing up, and that was always good.
Barry, you talking about your dad? He played basketball at OSU.
Played basketball.
Did he come right before Mr. Iba, or did he?
Oh yes, he was there. I think he started in '28.
Okay, so yeah.
And not sure who his coach was, but Bill Heifel, I think, was one of the players with him on the team, and I think Jack Baker. You remember Jack Baker, the football player?
Sure do.
Played just about football about the same time my dad was playing basketball, because he liked to go watch Jack Baker play football.
Jack was a tough guy, wasn't he?
Yes, yes he was.
What, Barry, going back to kind of your OSU experience, normally I'll ask a question like, what influence you come to Oklahoma State, but I think I know in this case, in addition to football, you had some pretty strong family influence for Oklahoma State.
Oh, yes.
But, so you rolled in the fall of '57.
Yes.
At Oklahoma State. Mm-hmm. What was your major?
My major was business administration, and I had a minor in psychology.
Okay.
Also a minor in phys ed.
What were your first impressions? Of course, you'd been on campus before with your dad, but as a student, what were some of your early impressions of the campus and of Stillwater?
Well, I enjoyed the campus. I always thought that was just a beautiful campus. Of course, I grew up, my grandparents had their 50th wedding anniversary right there at the Student Union. Had all the family in, had a big celebration.
Oh.
And so I got to spend some time before I became a student there on the campus. And then my dad was a Sigma Nu, so the Sigma Nu fraternity was always something that was on my mind, and I had the opportunity to go through Rush, and I went through Rush and lived in Cordell Hall with Mo Iba, Cecil Epperly, several other boys from Stillwater, but
did the athletes stay there in Cordell as opposed to Bennett Hall at that time?
well, when you went through Rush, that's where they had the boys going through Rush was in Cordell.
Okay, I see.
But then the athletes all lived in Bennett Hall. That's where I had to live, even though I played Sigma Nu and was a Sigma Nu member then after the Rush period. But I always loved the OSU campus.
Did you have some favorite hangouts on campus, places?
Probably the Sigma Nu house and the Student Union would be the place that you'd hang out. You could always find the bridge game there on the first floor, Student Union, or always dancing on the fourth floor, or
ballroom.
Yes. Or
Starlight Terrace on the fourth floor, wasn't it?
Yes. Or you could find somebody to visit with in the Student Union, or at the Sigma Nu house. You had to go there on the weekends, clean house when you were pledging. Then that became kind of a tradition to go over on the weekends sometime. But my roommate then, Blanchard Rill, became a Sigma Nu, so we'd go together. And it was a long way to walk to class from the Bennett Hall, and we'd do that 2 or 3 times a day. And it was just a fun place. Bennett Hall was nice, and Sandy the practice field, and to the student or the field house.
Field house, baseball stadium on the other side.
Of course, we had all the athletes in Bennett Hall all around our rooms, so there was always a lot of activity there. And a lot of.
Well, what about the community, Barry? Was some student hangouts? I mean, Aggie B, swims. What were they?
Yes, you could go to the Aggie B, but Mainly, we just spend our time right there on the campus, and I know we'd go early for 2-a-day football practices, and after football practice, when we were having 2-a-days and it was hot, we would go to by the fire station. They had a nice drugstore there. I can't remember the name of it, but we'd hang out there and drink some kind of a cold lemonade or something, and then go back to Bennett Hall and get ready for the next practice that day.
Now, your coach, your head coach, your team at that time was
Cliff Spiegel.
Cliff Spiegel.
Yes. And
you played on some pretty good teams.
Yes, my sophomore year, we had a good team. I can't remember our record, but it was something like 8-2 maybe. But we went to the Bluegrass Bowl in Louisville, Kentucky, and defeated Florida State. It was a cold, cold day. We had to play in Converse tennis shoes. I remember that, and it was really cold. The ground was just frozen and solid. But and there weren't that many fans in the stands. It was so cold. But
and some of the guys you played with, you remember some of them?
Forrest Campbell was an outstanding player that game. I remember that. And Jim Wood from Tonkawa, Jim Wiggins, Larry Rundle.
Did Dick Sorgel play on those teams?
Dick Sorgel was our quarterback. He had a good game. That's about all I can remember about that. But I can sure remember the cold.
I bet you can. Well, any other student, of course, as a student athlete, you didn't have a lot of free time, but besides the Signal House, any other organizations or activities you were involved in?
I played a little bit of intramural sports with the Sigmanese, and then I was in ROTC. Of course, we all had to take it for 2 years, so they kept us. I was in Air Force ROTC and did that. But I did run for a freshman vice president of the freshman class, and I was defeated by 1 vote, and I didn't get to vote, and my roommate didn't, because we had class and then had to go back to football practice, and then the polls were closed by the time I got out.
But, so you and Blanchard cost you the election then?
Yes, I think then I was living with a guy named Pat Hutchins. But a gentleman named Dan Draper beat me. So
pretty good politician.
Pretty good politician. Yeah. He defeated me.
Later life y'all got together. We were talking about Dan Draper, who was Speaker of the House.
Yes, that's it.
That's a good story. Did you accuse me of rigging the election?
Yes, I did.
Oh, mercy. Did you remember, is there any favorite professors that you had, people you remembered, administrators that influenced you while you were there?
Yes, I took business law under Glenn Laughlin, and I always enjoyed him. And then I had a speech teacher, let's see, named Gill. I can't remember his name, but I just really enjoyed him. And let's see, I had several. I thought most of our professors were really did a good job and taught you a lot.
Let's see, Oliver Wilhelm was president while you were there.
Yes.
And who was dean of the College of Business?
When I was there, was it Zimmerman, or was that later?
It's okay, I don't remember either. Where you? Is there some favorite memories that of your, as you think about your undergraduate years you were there? I guess in addition to football, were there some favorite memories you had?
Well, I think the overall activity at the Sigma New House was heavy on my mind, and you know, they had the frontier ball, and I went to that one time, and I had 3 other cousins, Melinda Berry, Anita Arrington, and Judy Myers were all at the ball, so we were all dressed Western and had our picture made together. And that was one of the highlights of some of that extracurricular activity. But then in Bennett Hall, you were at the field house all the time to the basketball games. They had I knew all the basketball players and the wrestlers and baseball players, so we were supporting all of them anytime they were participating. And
yeah, speaking of baseball, Toby Green was the coach. Weren't they
Toby
national
Green.
champions when you were there
Yes.
in '59?
Yes, they were. And they had some really outstanding players.
Remember Joel Harlan?
Oh, yes.
Pitched for them, then pitched for the White Sox for several years.
One of them that lived right by me was, well, I've forgotten his name now, but he was an outstanding player and pitched. It's been so many years ago.
And they had Harlan was their starter, and then they had, of course, the 2 brothers, Don and
Well, Dick Sorgel.
Dick
pitched.
Sorgel. See, Dick
Yes.
was one of those in the rotation. They had 3 in the main rotation.
Yes. And then, of course, Dick played basketball, football. He was.
He did it all.
Yeah, he did it all.
Oh, Lordy. Well, so some of your favorite memories were athletic events and things you did, Sigma Nu and
Sigma Nu, and then the activity. I dated a girl that was a Kaimega, so we had a lot of activities at the Kaimega house. And it seemed like there was always plenty of things to do.
well, what about, so you graduated then in 61? Would that have been
61 is when I
Mhm.
left. Yes.
Can you share a little bit about your professional life, personal life after you left Oklahoma State University?
Well, after I left Oklahoma State, then we bought the ranch out west of town, and
And that was with your father. You
my
said
father and I were partners, and my brother came on then. He was 8 years younger, and after he got out of college, he came on with us. But we had a lot of work to do getting the ranch ready to stock with cattle, so that was the main thing I did. And then we did some farming. Had wheat ground that had to work and put in, and then we put cattle on the wheat. So
It's pasture land and then
had pasture land that we ran the cattle on. So there was always a lot of work around the ranch, and I did that for a long time. Then
Barry, let me just add, Jay, now when you said you bought the ranch, that was a pretty good sized ranch, wasn't it?
yes, we had a good sized ranch. The Huffaker family had the ranch, and that's they were guys that grew up here in town. They didn't really want the ranch anymore, so we bought it from them, and then I moved right out to the ranch.
About how large was the ranch?
Well, it was around, like when we got it, it was about 7,000 acres, and then we added to it. As the land around it came up for sale, we'd buy in. But it's still that size today, and my brother and I have it now.
It was hard to ride across your ranch in one day, wasn't it? It's a
Yes,
pretty good
yes,
sized
it
ranch.
was. It's a nice sized ranch and a good ranch. We had the best grass on the grass part, and then the farm ground was right on the bank of the Arkansas River, so it's good farm ground. And it used to flood every now and then, but they put the dam in up above us, Call Lake, so that kept it pretty well under control from flooding. But it's a good place. Really.
Where has that been? Have you had other business interests in your life other than just the cattle and ranch business?
Well, served in the. First of all, I was.
Now, it's not for me. I want to get your political career in just a minute, okay?
Okay.
But in terms of your business and other things you did,
No, but I did. They put me on the local conservation board, Osage Conservation Board, and I served. I think I started out there in about 1975. And before that, I served as president of the Osage County OSU alumni for a year or two. And I think right before Tex Bayou took over.
was Merle Rogers alumni director at that time?
Yes, I think Merle Rogers was the director.
He was one of the most optimistic men ever in my life.
Sure was. Yes, he was fun to work with. And I enjoyed Merle. And then they put me on the conservation board, and I served on our local board, and then they put me on the state board, and I was elected president of the state board for a couple of years before I went into politics. I did a lot of work at the Capitol.
So you were talking about some of the things that you had done in terms of civic, and you mentioned you also served on the school board.
Yes, I served on our local school board here in Fairfax for about 5 years.
You served as the county chapter, alumni association chapter president. Did you serve on the larger board, the national board too?
No, I just served on our county board, and enjoyed that. We had a good group, and it was well attended there.
So Tex took over Bayou.
Tex Bayou took over, I think, after I went off. But Tex did a great job.
Well, let me back up. I got to ask now. So where did you? Is there a story about how you met Jackie? You said you didn't meet her at OSU. That's your wife.
I went after OSU to Northeastern to finish up, and met her there, and we dated a while, and then she was from Muskogee, and I said, well, we proposed and we got married, and I moved her out of Muskogee to the ranch. And she never had lived in the country before, but she really became accustomed to that. She had her degree in speech pathology, and went right to work here for the co-op, I guess, in Bartlesville, that provided speech therapy to different schools around in the county. So she traveled around. Then she volunteered at the Opportunity Center in Ponca City for the retarded kids, and I just really fell in love with those kids and enjoyed that. But I always liked the country until I got into politics, and she hated that I had to stay in Oklahoma City a lot. So after that, we moved in here, but that's a different story, and a lot leading up to that. But we raised our son and daughter in the country.
One son, one daughter.
One daughter.
And their names are
Barry Jr. And Tracy Lynn Harrison. They both went to OSU, got their degrees. My son was a Sigma Nu also.
Did you tell Junior the same thing your dad told you?
Yeah, well, he always, I guess, knew that OSU was the only place he was going to go. he grew up loving OSU.
Yeah. My understanding is he's kind of taken over active operations.
He's running the
ranch.
ranch right now.
Is Tracy involved with the family and business?
No, she got her degree in teaching.
Mm-hmm.
She left here and went to Dallas, taught for 15 years, and then became a flight attendant for several years. And then was married and divorced and moved back here to Fairfax, and she's raising her two kids, a boy named Harrison and a daughter named Jolie. Jolie's in the 1st grade and Harrison's in the 4th grade.
You have some kids. Does Barry Jr. have some kids?
He has 2 boys.
So you're
one in
close to the
8th grade.
grandkids.
One's in the 8th grade, and the other one's at OSU right now. He lives in the Sigma Nu house. He's a sophomore this year and just absolutely loves college.
Great. That's great.
And doing a good job. And
so we've got to. You want to go back to your political career, then, Barry, and just ask you what influenced you to get involved in politics and run for office?
Well, after I lived in the country and got into the conservation business and on the conservation board, and then they elected me president of the state conservation districts. That required me to do a lot of politicking, and we had to lobby the legislators a lot. So they thought that I was kind of a natural at it and talked me into running for office.
What was the first office you ran for, first position?
Well, it was the Senate.
Senate. So you didn't start with the House?
I didn't start with the House. We had a senator that had been in office about 20 years. They thought that we needed somebody that would represent the county a little better than it had been represented, so talked me into running. And I knew the gentleman pretty well, but formed a campaign committee, and we got things rolling, and I was fortunate enough to be successful. And
Barry, what year was that, your first election?
That was in 1990.
Okay.
So we campaigned about half of 1989, and I went in office in 90 and served till 2006, 4 terms.
How supportive was your mother? You know, she had this in her blood. You must have gotten it through.
She was very supportive. My mom and dad both. And I remember on the day that I was sworn into office, my son, his wife, and my grandson, that was 1 year old, and both the ones at OSU now. And my father and mother all came to the Capitol, and of course my wife, and my kids to see me sworn in. But my mom and dad enjoyed that day at the Capitol very much. They really talked to all the legislators that they could come in contact with.
And I've got to think that your mother, all the campaigns she sure must have helped her father with, probably was good counsel for you.
Yes, she was. She and they did a lot of campaigning for me. They knew how to do it, and really helped our campaign team.
You already had a pretty good built-in campaign.
Yes, we did. We had a good big family, so that always helps in the campaign.
Did Sarah Jane help you out some?
Yes, she did. She really did. She knew a lot of people that were in the Democrat Party that she worked for Nye for several years in his campaigns, and she knew exactly how to campaign and had a lot of advice for me. And I had another cousin, Everett Berry in Pawnee, that had the bank in Pawnee. Was in my district, but he lived in Stillwater. He lived out of my district, but his business was in my district. So I spent a lot of time with him, and he gave me lots of advice. But we had a good crew that would keep up signs, and had a crew that kept ads in papers, and I did a lot of door knocking and Main Street handshaking.
Barry, what were do you remember some of the issues, the campaign, some of your campaign activities?
Well, the main issues that my opponent had been in office for quite some time was we need a change. That was one of the things I campaigned on. We need a change in this area. Then after I was elected, it became experience counts.
It wouldn't change anymore after that, was it?
But of course, education's always an issue, economic development, and roads and highways, and that was the main thing here. We pushed those issues.
So roads and highways.
Highways and roads, county activity. But this district was really pretty hard to campaign in because you had so many cities, and you had so many schools, one in every city, and then you had 4 county seats with all the county officers that you had to campaign and talk to and shake hands with. So it kept you busy, making the rounds.
Was Jackie helpful in your campaign?
Jackie was a big help. She knew all of the education of school teachers, and by going to all the different communities around for her speech pathology work, and she was a big help. You get all of the. Of course, I had all the her friends that were in education, and then I had all the conservation districts in each county in the district, and there's 4 district directors in each district, plus the employees of the district. So, and then the cattlemen pretty well supported me. So I had a pretty good basic campaign crew, and I think that was why I became successful in politics.
I was going to ask you in your campaign, have you got some favorite campaign stories you remember? So you won that first campaign in '90, and you served 4 4-year terms. Is that right? 16 years as senator.
Yes, 16 years.
During that time, you got to have had some great stories and memories of some of your campaigns. Can you share some of those?
Well, the one that is on my mind now, my last term, I had an opponent, and I was fortunate enough my middle 2 terms that I was unopposed.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't have such a tough campaign. But the last one, I had an opponent, and my wife became ill with a liver problem. We were going to Minnesota for her routine checkups and this liver problem, and they discovered she had cancer in her liver. And this was in August, right before the November election. And they told her that she was probably going to have a liver transplant. So then they said, you have cancer in your liver, and it is bad. You need to go somewhere in a hurry. We can't do the transplant here, but we can send you to Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida. And we advise you to go right on now. So we left Minnesota Mayo Clinic to Jacksonville Mayo Clinic. And they had to do a lot of examining to see that she did not have cancer anywhere else in her body. After they were satisfied she did not, they put her on a transplant list. And in a week's time she was transplanted. But it took a couple of months for her to recuperate. So from all of her operations and exams and treatments, we got back here the day after the election. And my crew that I had in the past pretty well carried the whole campaign for me.
Wow, what a testimony.
My grandson at the watch party the night of the election would go to it was in Pawhuska, and he would run over to the election board office and get a tally on the precincts coming in. He would run back to the cafe where they were having a watch party right across the street and call us in Jacksonville, Florida, and give us the precinct numbers and the vote count. And finally called and said, you're successful, you're elected. But my grandson loved politics, and he did all that himself. And I think he was about a sophomore then in high school. But we got home the day after the election, and everybody had a big parade for us when we got home, and to welcome my wife home, and then congratulate me for being elected their senator again.
You had to feel good about that.
Yes, we were really appreciative of the people here in this district.
So you had 2 terms where you were unopposed by your party, or also in the general?
In the general, I was unopposed.
So you had 2 times and had no
yes,
opposition at all.
The first time I ran, I had a primary and a general election. And then the next 2 times I ran, I was unopposed, and then the last time I ran, I had a general election opponent.
Wow, that's great. Well, but all those years, you must have some favorites. There's some favorite campaign stories, some humorous stories you remember.
I'll tell you, I had one lady that was over by Keystone Lake that used to call. She had a convenience store and had a big residential development, and she called quite often, wanting advice or help with some red tape to do something with her residential development. But she called one night, frantic, and said, Barry, they just killed a man right here in my front door, and he's rolled right into my business. And I said, maybe you better not call me, you need to call the sheriff.
Well, you must have thought you could get things done, though.
I think she did. That was one of the shock phone calls that I've had. But I had people from all around the district that would call and request some things. One wanted me to get him a lawyer for a divorce. And, you just almost become a caretaker for the whole district, which that's what I wanted. I wanted to tell any of them that I could all the time.
That's a great tribute, though, to you. I mean, to the personal relationship, the connection you'd made with the people.
It is. I enjoyed the activity, and I enjoyed the people. We every year we always went to the Ralston Labor Day homecoming activity, and I would go to some of the farmers around that raised watermelon and get a pickup load of watermelon and ice them down. My son and his daughter and my grandsons and my wife and I would slice watermelon at a whole day at Labor Day and pass them out, just give them out at the Ralston activity. And that's where you got a lot of advice on what to do, and heard a lot of people's problems.
And some of them, you probably, it was difficult to keep them rolling in your eyes.
Yes,
I'm sure.
it was. And it was always 115 degrees out on that pavement passing out those watermelons.
115 in the shade, and wasn't in the shade.
That wasn't in the shade.
Well, Barry, what about kind of changing on your political career, looking at the Capitol? Did you some leadership positions that you were involved in? Could you share a little bit about your role in the party?
Okay, of course, I was a Democrat, and we were in control of had a majority in the Senate and the House at that time, so you did have an opportunity to pass a lot of bills, and I ran quite a bit of legislation and was successful in getting most of it through. I helped, just off the top of my head, helped a lot in transplanting the organization in Oklahoma and promoting it and really setting it up.
For organ transplants?
For all organ transplants. And one girl comes to mind with the governor and myself, and a lot of transplants up to that point. I can't remember what year it was, but this young lady got killed in a rodeo. A horse fell on her while she was running the barrels. But her brother agreed to let all the organs that she could possibly let be transplanted, let the daughter donate them. And she had signed her pledge to donate her organs on her license. But anyhow, this girl, the governor brought into the Capitol, to his office, everyone that an organ from this young lady went to save their life or to improve their life. And we had a whole office full of people that this girl helped by her donations of her organs. And her mother stood there the whole time with her picture, congratulated all of the people that this girl had helped, and that was probably the most touching thing I've ever seen at the Capitol. Of course, there's so many things that happen at the Capitol.
There's some other issues that were high priority for you, some legislation that you helped pass.
Education was a big one. I helped a lot in education. 1017 had just passed, and then I didn't have the time to go back. My last term had been almost 6 years ago, so I've forgotten a lot of it. But I had a lot of activity and legislation in agriculture, a lot in education, a lot in the Water Resources Board, or groundwater in Oklahoma and lake water, a lot of legislation in conservation, and I did a lot on the Appropriations Committee, and I was 1 year vice chairman of the Transportation Committee, and did a lot on roads. Of course, when you get to be a chairman and vice chair of a committee, then you get a lot of help, whatever that committee pertains to in your local area. You get a lot of help to bring back to your local area. So over the years, I served mainly on Economic Development Committee. We did a lot to promote that, and ran a lot of bills to help with economic development. I think I served on the Economic Development Committee for the whole time I was there, education the whole time I was there, transportation the whole time I was there. Let's see, but that was just really quite an experience. It's one of the things that's probably more educational than anything you can do. It's like every evening that we start out the session every year filing several thousand bills, and you're constantly reading bills to see what's in them that will benefit you, what's in them that you might not like, but it's just like a college course, just studying bills all the time, and that's the main thing. And but it was quite an experience. I'm proud to have the opportunity to serve like that.
Were there some principles and priorities of yours that guided and defined your political life? Well,
it was always my ambition political ambition to really be there for the people. I thought that, and I still think all politicians ought to be there to make life as easy for the people in your district as you can. There's a lot of red tape in our world today, and there's a lot of things that people don't understand. But if you're there to help them with everyday living, your taxes, your income tax, your property tax, your insurances, your motor vehicle registration and licensing, and there's just so many things that a lot of people need help, and shorten the length of time it takes to do anything politically. I was there for the people was the main thing, and to try to help them in their everyday life, help educate our kids, to make jobs available for the kids, and try to encourage them to further their education as far as they could, and then provide a good job for them when they got out.
Yeah, as I recall, you were very supportive of higher education as well.
Very supportive of higher education. I knew the benefit of higher education and how important it is for all kids, if it's not anything else besides technical training. It's really all higher education, and they need that to secure a good job when they reach adulthood. And that always promotes good families. After they can get out of college, get a good job, and then their family, they're going to see that they do the same thing. So it helps rotate our standard of living, I think.
Were there some people or personalities, either in the Senate House, or governor, staff, that come to your mind that you think about during your 16 years you're there?
I think the one that I probably enjoyed was Senator Gene Stipe. He could entertain. When we were running lots of bills and things got kind of testy, and people ran out of patience, he always knew how to step in and either start a little filibuster or do some debating, or he might debate a bill on promoting it for a while, and then somebody would say, now that isn't the way you voted last time, and he'd say, well, I was just telling you the good things about it, now I'll tell you the bad things about it. And he could turn around and start the other way, but he could change the mood of the Senate when we were in session real quickly, and he'd keep everybody kind of motivated and going on a long afternoon or an evening when you had to stay late.
Which governors did you serve under?
I served under Bellman, then Walters, and then let's see, I never Walters, and then who was the last one?
Is the Republican governor, or is it still?
Bellman was the Republican.
Okay.
He was in the office when I first went in, and then Walters took over, and then Nye. I think Nye.
Who's?
And then Brad Henry. I served with him in the Senate, and he was elected just before I went out of office.
Which one did you enjoy the most, in the most respect?
I liked them all. Nye was a good governor, and he was probably one that was he could go either way. He was big on education. He didn't try to run down political lines. He'd step over the line and help you. He looked at the issues and decided if they were good or bad. He didn't look at politics and see what party. And Walters was real intelligent, did a good job. I liked Walters. Oh, and Keating. Keating was the Republican after Walters.
That was when I said the Republican governor, I was thinking of Keating.
Yes. And Keating did a good job. I probably enjoyed Walters and Bellman the best. And I think Brad Henry has done an excellent job and did a good job as Senate in the Senate while he was in there.
You have strong historical family ties, as we talked about with OSU. Are these connections a source of pride for you? I mean, do you have strong feelings about that?
I just look at the things that my family has accomplished. You know, the 4 kids that my grandfather and his 2 sisters and his brother, Dora, Jenny, Tom, and Jim Berry. Those 4 children went out on their own, and my Aunt Jenny, great Aunt Jenny, went to Cleveland and married a Mullendore. My grandfather's sister, Dora, went to Blackwell, married a Goodson, and they started the bank that had a big ranch farm in the Blackwell area.
And is that the family Larry Cannon married into?
Larry Cannon, yes. Joe Berry Cannon. And then Tom Berry had the Tom Berry Oil Company, and they just all quite successful people. And I always remember my grandfather James E. Berry would go. We would have activities over at Blackwell. He loved Dora Goodson, his sister. They could sit and visit in a whole room full of people to each other. They would not get a foot away from each other and just visit. You could tell they thought so much of each other. And I always marveled at how close they were. But I always liked to see that. But I always admired the family and what they had accomplished, and the kind of people they were, the family people, and what they all accomplished and lived by.
You think they left a pretty good legacy, huh?
I think they left a good legacy, and the cousins that grew up under them have all been great people and good people, and I've enjoyed them. And it's always a pleasure to run into them no matter where you are. And the family's so scattered out that you get the opportunity to run into cousins about everywhere you go. And it's just always fun to see them, and they're always just great people and have such good personalities. And it's an honor to be part of their family.
How's that legacy, you think, influenced your life?
Well, I just see the kind of life they've lived, and it just makes you want to do that and to treat people this really the way you want people to treat you. And that's kind of the way they are. They're always just a great personality, glad to see you, honestly worried about you and how you're doing, and if you have health problems, they're all there for you. They're just top-notch people, and that's kind of seeing that has made me try to run my life the same way.
What sort of 2-part question, kind of closing. One of them I meant to ask earlier, but as you were growing up and around your parents and Berry family members and Harrison family members, what values did you learn that helped shape the rest of your life?
I think how to treat people, how to work hard, how to work to work hard to achieve what you want to in life, and mainly the honesty and be an honest person and work hard and be good to people. Treat people just exactly the way you would want to be treated. That's kind of the way I've always wanted to run my life, and pass on to my kids. Honesty and hard work will get you a lot of places, and treat people with respect.
Looking back, how do you've made a lot of contributions publicly and in your business and to the state through your political affiliation. How do you hope people remember J. Barry Harrison?
Well, I hope that they can remember me as an honest, hard-working people that was here trying to do the best and leave a good legacy of life, and I feel like I've had the opportunity to do quite a few things, and I've enjoyed it. I appreciate it, and I hope people just look back and say he lived a good life, he worked hard, he was honest, and leave a pleasant feeling to them about myself.
Well, what do you want to do with the rest of your life?
Well,
you got some hobbies, activities?
Help my grandkids,
Mm-hmm.
and my kids, and take care of my wife and family, and enjoy what life I have left. And I enjoy the bank work and going to the country when I can, and seeing the activities of my grandkids. So that's what I'd like to do with the rest of my life.
Barry, you mentioned just a second ago about the bank, for the Stillwater National Bank. Of course, the Barry family's been involved in it for many, many years. Are you on the board there? Are you still actively involved in the bank? Still active
on the board. I've been on about 12, 15 years, and I enjoy the bank work and serving on the board of directors, and hope I get to for several more years. Bank's part of the family, and we keep expanding now. The bank has grown so much. We're up to $3 billion in assets, and we run from Kansas City to up and down I-35 all the way to San Antonio, Texas. So we're in Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas, and branches everywhere. So bank's doing wonderfully well, and hope that it continues to do so. It's provided a lot of help in promoting in a lot of communities all through here. So that's what we want to keep it going, good shape.
Barry, is there anything else that you recall about your family, anything we haven't talked about that perhaps I've failed to ask, or that you'd like to add to what we've talked about?
I think we've pretty well talked about everything. It's just I just can't stress enough how good my life has been. I've had wonderful parents, wonderful sisters and brothers, wonderful kids, grandkids. I just have really enjoyed the opportunities I've had to go to a good college like OSU, to participate in sports, to serve in politics, and I appreciate the opportunities I've had, and it'd just be nice if everybody had the opportunity to do some of the things I've done. But OSU has just been a wonderful place to make for me to have memories of, and still enjoy. You just get a thrill every time you go back to the campus or the city, and the same way in politics. You go to the Capitol and you get the good feeling. It's just, I just appreciate the opportunities I've had in life.
Very appreciate you taking time to visit with us, and congratulations on life well lived.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here today.